When 78-year-old Clara sat quietly in her living room one afternoon, she found herself staring at an old photo she hadn't touched in years. It was from her wedding day, her husband smiling, her eyes full of hope. Yet that same man had left her decades ago, and the memory still made her heart tighten. "I thought time would take care of it," she whispered, "but some hurts don't seem to fade." Clara wasn't bitter exactly. She had a good life, children, even grandchildren who adored her. But somewhere inside there was a quiet ache that never quite healed a weight she carried, without realizing how heavy it had become. Many seniors know that feeling all too well. Sometimes it's a family member who never said, "I'm sorry," a friend who betrayed trust, or a child who grew distant. Other times it's forgiveness we owe ourselves for mistakes made long ago, for words said in anger, or for chances we let slip away. As the years pass, those small pieces of pain settle in the heart like stones, slowly shaping the way we think, speak, and even breathe. We may smile on the outside, but inside those memories whisper, "You'll never forget." But here's the truth. Science is finally proving forgiveness isn't about forgetting. It's about freeing the brain and body from the chronic stress that holding on creates. Studies from Stanford and Harvard have shown that people who practice forgiveness, truly letting go of long-standing anger, experience lower blood pressure, better sleep, and even improved immune function. Forgiveness isn't weakness. It's biology, a kind of internal housekeeping that clears the emotional clutter of decades. So why is it so hard? Because the heart often confuses forgiveness with surrender. Many seniors believe that forgiving someone means excusing what they did. Others think it means pretending it never happened. But true forgiveness isn't about approval, it's about release. It's saying, "I choose peace over pain," and that choice, while simple, is rarely easy. Over the years, people try many ways to cope with lingering resentment. Some bury it under distractions, television, busy schedules, or endless to-do lists. Others turn away from it, convincing themselves it no longer matters. Some even try to outgrow it through time, thinking years will dull the sting. But as research shows, the brain doesn't forget emotional wounds. It replays them quietly, activating the same stress responses that physical pain would. It's why an old memory can still make your chest tighten or your stomach twist. Clara once told her daughter, "I don't think I'm angry anymore." But when she ran into her ex-husband's name on an old Christmas card, she felt her hands tremble. That's how deeply emotional memory embeds itself. It lives in the body, not just the mind. Over time, that tension can influence everything: how we sleep, how we relate to others, even how our hearts function. Holding on to resentment is like carrying a backpack filled with rocks. You get used to the weight until someone shows you what it's like to set it down. That's what this video is about: learning the science and soul of letting go. Forgiveness isn't something that just happens, it's something we practice. And for seniors, it can be the most transformative act of the later years, a way to make peace not just with others, but with oneself. If this topic resonates with you, please hit the like button, subscribe to Senior Ways, and share your thoughts below. What's one thing or one person you still find hard to forgive? You don't need to name them. Just saying "I'm ready to let go" is a brave first step. Solution number 1, understand what forgiveness really means. When 80-year-old Walter attended his first support group for seniors, he rolled his eyes when the topic of forgiveness came up. "I've lived too long to forget the things people have done," he said bluntly. The facilitator smiled gently and replied, "Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting, Walter. It means not reliving it every day." That line landed like a soft hammer on his heart. Walter had spent decades replaying one memory: a friend who'd cheated him out of a business deal in his 40s. Every time the man's name came up, Walter's blood pressure seemed to rise. But what he didn't realize was that his body had been responding as if the betrayal was still happening, even 40 years later. Modern neuroscience explains this well. When we recall painful events, the amygdala, the brain's emotional alarm system, reactivates the same stress patterns as the original experience. Cortisol rises, the heart rate quickens, and the body goes into fight-or-flight mode. Forgiveness, on the other hand, quiets that alarm. It's a deliberate signal to the brain that the danger has passed. The moment we decide to stop replaying the past, we create space for calm and healing. For Walter, this realization was liberating. He didn't have to call his old friend or pretend nothing happened. He only had to stop giving that memory power over his peace. He began repeating a quiet phrase every morning: "That story is finished." Over time, the name that once made him tense began to lose its sting. He wasn't excusing the wrong, he was reclaiming his energy. Forgiveness at its core is not an act of approval, it's an act of freedom. And that freedom starts the very moment you decide you're tired of carrying what doesn't belong to you anymore. Solution number 2, recognize the cost of holding on. 76-year-old Helen once told her doctor she felt exhausted for no reason. She slept fine, ate well, and took her medications on time, yet she always felt heavy, as though something inside her refused to rest. During a counseling session, she realized that she'd been carrying unresolved resentment toward her sister for nearly 50 years. "We stopped talking after a family argument in our 30s, she said. "At this point, I don't even remember what started it, just that I swore I'd never call first." That silent tension had become part of her body chemistry. Chronic anger and resentment research shows can elevate inflammation markers in the blood, weaken immune response, and accelerate aging at the cellular level. A landmark study from Emory University found that people who struggle with long-term grudges have significantly higher stress hormone levels, especially cortisol, which contributes to fatigue, digestive issues, and high blood pressure. The body literally remembers hostility. When Helen learned this, she was stunned. "So my anger might actually be making me sick?" she asked. The therapist nodded. "Your body doesn't know the difference between a memory and a threat. It reacts the same way to both." That night, Helen sat at her kitchen table and took out a blank card. She didn't know what she would write, but she wanted to start somewhere. Finally, she wrote, "I don't know how to fix what happened, but I hope you're doing well." She never sent it, but the next morning, she said she felt lighter than she had in years. Forgiveness isn't always about reconciliation. It's about acknowledging the invisible toll that anger takes and deciding your health is worth more than your pride. When you stop letting old pain live rent-free in your heart, you make room for peace to move back in. Solution number 3, learn to forgive yourself. First, 82-year-old Lorraine used to wake up every morning and say the same phrase under her breath: "I should have done better." It wasn't about anyone else, it was about herself. She regretted not finishing college, not being patient enough with her kids, and not calling her mother more often before she passed away. "The hardest forgiveness," she said softly, "is the one you owe to yourself." Many seniors carry quiet self-blame that others never see. You might forgive others, but the voice that whispers, "You should have known better," stays loud. Yet self-forgiveness isn't indulgence, it's healing. Psychologists describe it as a 2-step process, acknowledging your humanity and learning from your imperfection. When Lorraine began seeing a counselor, she learned something fascinating about how guilt operates in the brain. Guilt activates the same regions associated with empathy. It's a moral alarm meant to guide behavior, not punish you endlessly. But when left unresolved, that alarm keeps ringing, turning into chronic shame. The difference is that guilt says, "I did something wrong," while shame says, "I am something wrong." To heal, Lorraine started writing letters, one to her younger self, one to her mother, and one simply titled, "To the Me Who Tried Her Best." She ended that letter with a single sentence: "You were doing the best you could with what you knew then." Over time, those words began to quiet the noise. When she finally allowed herself to say out loud, "I forgive me," she described it as taking her first full breath in years. Self-forgiveness doesn't mean erasing the past. It means recognizing that you've already paid the price, and now you deserve the peace. Solution number 4, reframe the past, don't relive it. 79-year-old Frank once told his pastor, "I don't understand how to let go when I can still remember every detail." The pastor smiled and said, "The goal isn't to forget the past, it's to see it differently." That became the turning point in Frank's healing. After losing his brother in an argument that never found closure, Frank spent years replaying their last conversation. Every word echoed in his mind like a scratch on a record. But then, during a support group session, someone shared a concept called reframing. It's the psychological process of changing the meaning you assign to an event, not to deny it, but to understand it from a wider perspective. He began asking himself new questions. What if my brother was struggling too? What if we were both just hurt and didn't know how to say it? Those questions didn't change what happened, but they changed how he felt about it. That's the power of reframing. It replaces bitterness with understanding. Neuroscientists have discovered that when we reinterpret painful memories, the brain creates new neural pathways, effectively rewriting the emotional response. It doesn't erase the memory, it rewires the feeling attached to it. That's why reframing is so central to emotional healing. It turns the same story into a gentler one. Frank now visits his brother's old fishing spot once a month. He sits quietly, throws a line into the water, and says out loud, "I'm proud of you, and I love you." He knows his brother can't hear it, but that's not the point. It's Frank's way of living with the past without being haunted by it. Forgiveness doesn't erase memories, it softens their edges. It teaches you to honor your story, not hide from it. Because every chapter, even the painful ones, made you the wise, compassionate person you are today. Solution number 5, use gratitude to loosen the grip of anger. When 77-year-old Margaret attended her granddaughter's wedding, she was nervous not because of the event, but because her ex-husband was invited. They hadn't spoken in over 25 years. During the reception, she caught herself watching him dance with their grandchildren. For a brief second, she felt that familiar wave of resentment rise, all the old stories, the betrayals, the pain. But then she noticed her granddaughter's laughter. The joy in the room was bigger than her anger. Margaret later said, "In that moment I realized I could choose what to focus on, the bitterness of the past or the blessings of the present." That choice is the essence of forgiveness through gratitude. When we focus on what's still good, our health, family memories, or simple comforts, we train our brain to release emotional tension. Research from the University of California shows that gratitude activates the prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for emotional regulation. It calms the amygdala, lowers stress hormones, and creates what psychologists call cognitive contrast, the ability to hold joy and pain at the same time without collapsing under either. Margaret began a quiet ritual every night before bed. She whispered 3 things she was thankful for, no matter how small. Some nights it was just, "My blanket is warm," or "The house is quiet," she said. But gradually that practice softened her resentment until forgiveness no longer felt impossible. "It's like watering the flowers instead of the weeds," she smiled. Gratitude made forgiveness grow naturally. Solution number 6, let empathy do the heavy lifting. When 80-year-old Harold's son stopped speaking to him after a family dispute, Harold spent years stewing in guilt and disappointment. "He's the one who walked away," Harold would say. But after reading an article about empathy therapy, he decided to try something unusual. He began writing letters from his son's point of view. In those letters, he imagined what his son might be feeling: frustration, sadness, confusion. It wasn't about agreeing with him. It was about understanding his pain. Something shifted. When I saw the story from his eyes, Harold said, "I couldn't stay angry. I saw a scared young man instead of an ungrateful son." That's the hidden key to forgiveness: empathy. It's not a justification for someone's actions, but an acknowledgement of shared humanity. Neuroscientists call this the mirror neuron effect. When you imagine another person's emotions, your brain activates the same areas as if you were experiencing those emotions yourself. This doesn't erase boundaries or excuses, it simply dissolves emotional walls. Empathy lowers tension and restores compassion, which makes forgiveness possible. Harold eventually reached out to his son with a letter that began, "I don't need an apology. I just want to understand you better." 3 weeks later, his son called. It wasn't a movie moment, Harold laughed, but it was a start. Empathy is not weakness, it's courage with understanding. It says, "I refuse to let bitterness define my story." Solution number 7, practice letting go as a daily habit. 81-year-old Ruth keeps a small jar on her nightstand labeled, "Let it go." Every time she catches herself holding on to something, a rude comment from a neighbor, a regret about the past, or an unkind word she once said, she writes it on a slip of paper, folds it, and drops it into the jar. Once a month, she burns the note safely in her fireplace. It's my reminder, she says, that I can't move forward with my hands full. Forgiveness isn't a one-time act, it's maintenance for the soul. Just as we clean our homes or stretch our muscles, we must regularly clear the emotional clutter. Psychologists at Duke University call this emotional hygiene. Their studies show that intentional release practices, such as journaling, prayer, or meditation, reduce anxiety by as much as 30% and increase overall well-being. Ruth says she doesn't expect to forget every pain, but she's learned to visit those memories less often. They can stay in the past, she says. I've got more peace waiting in the present. Final thoughts. Forgiveness, as science now confirms, transforms the body and the mind. It lowers blood pressure, slows heart rate, improves sleep, and boosts immune function. The simple act of letting go quiets the nervous system and rebalances hormones. But beyond biology, forgiveness restores something far deeper, your spirit's freedom to love again without fear. So take this to heart. True forgiveness isn't for the person who hurt you. It's for you. It's the gift of waking up each morning without carrying yesterday's storm into today's sunlight. Clara Walter, Helen Lorraine, Frank, Margaret, Harold, and Ruth each discovered in their own way that letting go isn't losing. It's gaining back the space to breathe, to smile, to live. If this message touched your heart, please hit the like button, subscribe to Senior Ways, and share this video with someone who might need to hear these words. And tell us in the comments what's one burden you're ready to release today. Because every time you forgive, you don't erase your story, you set your soul free to write a new one.